Hi everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Just a little more interactive panel session here. A little more on it. I know everybody's tired. It's already near 9 o'clock. We've been doing a non-stop split panels talking, and you guys been listening. So today the topic includes two interesting keywords, right? Mass adoption, which was really hot keyword last year, not really happening yet, and DeFi. So we're gonna talk about the driving mass adoption of DeFi today, and I'll just, we all have a mic, so I'm just gonna, you guys can introduce yourself, and I'll wrap it up, Go ahead, Christy.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Cool, this is Christy Choi from Binance Ops. We're the investment arm of Binance. Currently overseeing the investment works at Binance. Nice to meet you guys.
Good evening.
Interactive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Eric Yu from DXN. Many people might not know about DXN, but we are a subsidiary of Tunabu, and we were set up at the beginning of this year. We are engaged in many businesses, of which one is DeFi protocol and development. We also recently announced a partnership with a foreign company in regards to custody. We're also engaged in a crypto-to-crypto OTC facilitation. We have a desk available for that. We haven't yet announced our fourth business, but it will mostly involve staking as a service. And I'm really glad Chase actually invited me to give me the opportunity to present ourselves in front of you. Thank you.
Peko.
Hi everyone, Peko here from Pundi X. Really a pleasure to be here in Seoul again, and I'm based in Taipei. I just flying in from Taipei where the typhoon hit Taipei, and then come to this lovely weather. Really feel welcome. And Pundi X is a as some of you may know, is the blockchain-based device, point-of-sale device, bring the cryptocurrencies to the mass adoption. So we want to make the cryptocurrencies to be easily adopted by the mainstream users. And now our devices has been shipped to over 30 countries in the world. And we're very focusing on inviting people to use cryptocurrency to exchange to goods and services, and not just only for trading.
Right, so we got Pundi X, the higher payment business. We got DXN, which is a product company of it, and we have Bainense, which is Bainense, right? So before we start, saying.
That was a perfect description. Thank you.
All right. I know the first panel was about definition of DeFi, and I know we've been talking about for half an hour, but as we learned in previous hours that there's really no clear definition of DeFi, and I think it'll be really important for us to slightly touch how each of the firm or how each of the individuals sitting up here think about DeFi, how they define DeFi. Since it's not our main topic, I want it to be very brief. I kind of want to share your point of view, what DeFi is, which will kind of lead us for the next 25 minutes of talking. Sure, Eric?
Okay.
Don't be too
Okay. So I think for finance, I mean, there's very old concept. Still exists in current society that for those who are bank, if they want to borrow money, they actually will gather, like in the family, they gather all the money together, and then they borrow it to one of the family member. So this is one of the oldest way of financing. It doesn't go to a financial centralized service provider. So I think DeFi would be like that way, like having a financing activities that going through a non-centralized way.
Interesting. And more P2P.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. I do think defining, what DeFi means amongst the panelists is important because it really differentiates like what exactly the mass adoption of crypto will look like and what exactly mass adoption of DeFi will look like as well. Because I believe crypto is becoming a new asset class within the financial industry, and because of that, we will see a lot of different financial products being built with crypto, like lending, derivatives, options, lending, and many of the products that us at Binance also offer these services. But then DeFi, by definition, is decentralized finance. So I think the value proposition of DeFi, and if we really want a mass adoption of DeFi, it's not going to be those centralized services just around crypto itself, but it has to be decentralized. It has to be trustless. It has to create an open systems, or else the user. We'll be talking about like the mass adoption part a lot, but I do believe like there has to be a clear value proposition where people will move over from the existing financial services to an open finance and trustless DeFi network that we all call it that. Or else it's just going to be like the crypto folks who are in this room right now, already trading crypto, just using crypto again and again. And we all know that we're talking about mass adoption here because there's no adoption. So that is my definition of DeFi here today. It's not just about the centralized products that are being built, financial products that are built around crypto. Of course, that will be kind of dominant for the next few years. It's going to be, because there's a product market fit, there is needs for those financial products. But I think the real definition of DeFi and what we're really looking forward to in the crypto community is a trustless, open financial system. So that's my definition.
Interesting, coming from Christy.
Well, I think the definition, the word DeFi itself is a combination of two words, decentralization and finance. In most cases, finance alone is a very difficult word. It will give headaches to many people. And added on top of that, you have decentralization. So from an average John Doe's perspective, he or she will be like, what is DeFi? How do you define DeFi? It's still at its very nascent stage, but you will notice that a lot of these DeFi protocols and services are actually mimicking what traditional finance has gone through and is going through. It's just that these protocol and services, they either never had the chance to shine in front of the public because they didn't have that exposure, or it was very illiquid and people just couldn't use it. I think DeFi, at the end of the day, it's like finance, but gaining trust from another entity that is not centralized. When I say not centralized, I don't necessarily mean it's fully decentralized, but I think it's more of a scheme, and it depends on what layer that centralization shifts towards decentralization.
Thanks, Eric. I think we all mentioned that it is really hard to define DeFi one way, or kind of just mention DeFi because there's really no 100% perfect DeFi project that's happening in the industry, which is agreed by everybody, I think. So mass adoption of DeFi project. I'm gonna take this panel in a little bit broader sense. I'm gonna allow a little bit of what some people might call crypto finance as a part of the conversation. Otherwise, we really got no case, I think. So what's the biggest hurdle? We're talking about mass adoption, obviously, as Chris said, because it's not happening. We're sitting here talking about it, and it didn't happen. It's not happening either. No one's really seeing the growth of, or the birth of mass adoption yet. So I think it's important to actually, point out what's the biggest hurdle, from your perspective or your company's perspective, and if you guys are tackling it in one way or another, strategy-wise. You arrested anybody? You guys all have money?
Okay. I think the biggest hurdle right now for DeFi is that cryptocurrency itself, because most of the DeFi products based on the cryptocurrencies. So I think one of the biggest hurdle is that whether cryptocurrency have been widely adopted, so that that would relevant to the DeFi sector. But
Would
however,
Bitcoin be widely adopted in a way or not? What's your definition
I
of
would
widely
say
adopted?
there are many cryptos in this space, over 2,000 cryptos, and they have their user cases, and we are still in the stage of pushing the adoptions. So I think for DeFi, it's a must to grow, because the existing users of crypto, like seeing the way of gaining profits, interest, and then to grow this space. And however, I think for crypto to be adopted, still we have a way to go, and then to kind of further to make this space boom. Yeah.
Thanks. Peko? Any different angles or I want to add?
I wouldn't say it's a different angle, but I think it's because it's very difficult for an average user to actually experience it. I mean, I really can't imagine my parents, for example, downloading or getting MetaMask, sending ETH to it, blah blah blah. So I think it has more to do with it's very difficult. Two, you'll see a lot of these protocols and services that are focused on ETH, but ETH in some parts of the area around the world might have a lot of fans, and some might think it's not as efficient for finance. And at the end of the day, I think number three, it's because it's very illiquid. Finance is mostly about liquidity, and right now, honestly speaking, DeFi services, all the services out there are very small and illiquid. So I think that's one of the problems. It has yet to actually penetrate the mass market.
So bad UX, limitation to Ethereum, and
I don't want to get bombarded by all the ETH fans, to be honest, and I never said ETH was not the answer, but I do say no. But I really, there should be it should be connected to other mainnet. It should be able to accept other mainnets as well, because think of it, Bitcoin roughly takes 70 to 80% of the total market cap, and most of the liquidity is focused on Bitcoin, right? If you mention DeFi without actually encompassing Bitcoin, that might be leaving a big picture out of the whole ecosystem. So I would like to emphasize, I am not criticizing ETH. I love ETH, but there needs to be more chains added to for DeFi to get mass adoption.
right. For the mass adoption, we need more diversified the currency.
Is ETH gonna go up because of this comment? Yeah. I think a lot of people say mass adoption of crypto is not happening because of user experience. I think that's what you might be hearing all the time in different conferences and different meetups, different research papers. It might be a problem, like the user experience, like he mentioned about like how you need to log into MetaMask. The wallet address is, it's not user friendly. So we actually did invest in like a project that creates like a human readable wallet address itself. So user experience is definitely like one of the factors that's hindering like the mass adoption. But when it comes to mass adoption, it's not just about like your product being beautiful and it's being easy to use. There has to be a clear value proposition of why people need to really use it. So I feel like there is just no product market fit. There is no needs. There is no demand for a truly decentralized finance at the moment. That is why we're seeing like all the products that are gaining a lot of traction are done by the centralized parties like ourselves, like many of the products that we're offering, including a staking service that we have announced. or, I mean, it definitely staking as a service is a DeFi product, but all the products will probably see traction by the centralized parties that already have traction and user base by other products as well. The true decentralized finance products that I, under my definition from my earlier comments, will definitely come in different formats and in different timing according to different needs, I believe. And that includes, Binance is very bullish about emerging countries, and we've been doubling down in areas such as Africa or Latin America, because I mean, just as I guess Jay mentioned again, Bitcoin itself I think is a DeFi. It is a permissionless open protocol that allows P2P transactions, and it is already seeing a lot of it is serving. Store of value in areas where fiat is not working well, or where there's huge capital control, or people it's essentially replacing fiat in a way, or it's getting adoption. So in some areas, the adoption rate of crypto or Bitcoin is already hitting 10%, and I think the definition of kind of hitting mass adoption, the tipping point may be at 10%. So there are these reasons already, but I would say we're talking about mass adoption here because it's not happening in areas where we live and where all the projects are being started. So there has to be at least 10x better value proposition from these DeFi products to be mass adopted. And that's of course going to be where replacing or having a clear value proposition compared to the traditional financial products. So I do believe it's going to be where areas where the financial products currently available for only institutions, large corporations, financial products only available for well-educated audiences. I believe like Gen Z or people who were able to trade financial products. If we provide access to those people, if it's 10x better by being decentralized, so decentralization should be a core product value proposition instead of being a barrier for adoption.
There hasn't been a right product market fit or the market needs yet to be found.
So I think that's going to happen in emerging countries for sure, because
I have an interesting follow-up question for
Yeah.
you. So a lot of times, the definition included the mention, all the parties mentioned about the existing financial products or services, right? Because we're talking about decentralized finance, and we've been playing with money since money was born, and we've been calling it finance services, right? So interesting point is like I think everybody here is actually building products that's P2C oriented in a way, and like Pundi X and the Binance has been already struggling or building or fighting against all the regulations or the limitation of the market or the I'm going to the sensitive area. The thing is, my question is, do you think it's the traditional finance services that's coming from the traditional sense of the finance service with a little bit of the or full decentralization in it, or the brand new idea, brand new product that will actually lead us to mass adoption? Because I mean, we've seen in IT, like we've seen kids who skip the computer era in Thailand who just cell phone and smartphone into the internet, right? So, it's kind of like sci-fi question. I know there's no right answer, but since you guys in the industry and thinking about this all the time, I'm sure. What do you guys think? Is a traditional finance that's being transitioned, or is it a brand new idea?
I come up from a background and I was very used to traditional finance. Traditional finance is typically a very top-down approach. Most of the customers are big institutions and retails are actually left out. So I think mass adoption of DeFi will probably come like our panelists said, through the long tail end from retails that were actually deprived of this. And maybe for the first time I wouldn't say they'll overcome these major Goliaths, but David, when you think of Goliath, this is David, a lot of these Davids will actually be in a good position to have their voices listened and actually have skin in the game. And I think that's when mass adoption will come. And I think, if you go back to this might be out of the conversation, but the way people value Bitcoin in traditional finance, it was all about discounted cash flow. Maybe after discounted cash flow, it was all about comparing PE ratios, PBR ratios. Now it's actually people are really dumbfounded because for the first time in like a few years, they've actually come up with an asset class that no one knows how to clearly value, and there is no cash flow involved, and it's like new, right? And if you go back to history, when the first stock was issued, it took like 400 years before a research report actually getting the consensus of other people was published. I don't think it'll take that long for a real framework for Bitcoin valuation to come up, but it's going to be much shorter than 400 years, but I think we need to change the perspective. We may need to think differently on how you value things from now on. I think that's when DeFi and the whole crypto industry / blockchain will actually grow a lot.
I totally agree of the value of things because the way that we use cryptocurrency started with we believe in their value, and what we are going to do is to increase the cryptocurrency's value, so that you can use the cryptocurrency to exchange of goods and services. So I think for DeFi to grow, that we have to expand the value of the cryptocurrency. So go back to the money. Why money fiat has been valued as just a paper, right? So how this one get valued? Because they have usage. So I think for this sector to be growth and with a new technology, that we have a new way to value all kinds of things in the world, including, for example, loyalty points, goods and services, all kinds of digital assets, and how we leverage digital currency and to give all those value in exchange of those cryptocurrency.
So basically payments.
Yes. Yes.
You're in the right industry, I guess.
Coming to your question around whether it's going to happen through big companies or by retail.
Not the size of the big company or not. I think the question was a little bit crooked along the way.
Yeah.
The question was, do you think it'll be the traditional funds?
Got it. Yeah.
Brand new ideas.
Yeah. It's probably going to happen together. I mean, of course, like the centralized, crypto finance products will early gain because obviously there are arbitrage opportunities. There are opportunities where people, because at the end of the day, right now, crypto, the real use case is around speculation. So a lot of different speculative products will gain a lot of attention within the crypto community who are already onboarded in crypto, and because there are a lot of institutions, traditional financial institutions coming into crypto as well, they'll definitely leverage those products, and then that will grow huge in the volumes. But then if we're talking about the DeFi products again, then I do believe that it's gonna come, like the mass adoption outside of financial institutions trading these crypto finance products is probably gonna come from people who really need and want the decentralized function of money, which is probably the easy peasy low hanging fruit would be around emerging economies, as I just mentioned, where fiat has some constraints. and people are willing to, people want a decentralized network because they cannot trust the centralized institution, or because the capital access, for example, like remittance, we currently don't really have full access to financial products outside of Korea, or I don't know. There are not many people who really can instantly trade different financial products. So if crypto can enable that, and if there are financial decentralized products that enables capital access 24/7 globally, it's probably going to bring mass adoption among the retail users, and that's going to grow the transactional value in crypto. And I think that's the reason why people are talking about DeFi and why people are excited about DeFi. So it's going to probably come together, whereas the latter part will take longer time. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we should cheer for the failing of centralized government.
Oh, I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is kind of true that where decentralized word it means the most, where the centralized system does not function correctly. And I think that's really good traditional comment you mentioned that I think talking about DeFi and the mass adoption, stablecoin. I know first panel talked about it lightly, but talking about centralized, what's the right word? I'm sorry. Libra, that's what I want to say. Facebook, Libra, stablecoin controlled by the central bank, CBDC. What do you guys think about it? I mean, it's not, a lot of people criticize that it's not a cryptocurrency, it is a digital currency. It's not decentralized at all. However, just all the topic of our panel, do you think it's going to bring a positive impact or negative impact?
Certainly a lot of positive impacts.
Okay.
I feel like, I don't know how everyone feels, but after Facebook Libra, a lot of people outside of crypto are starting to recognize crypto a lot, and it's kind of eye-opening for the competing companies or big corporates like the Fortune. I feel like the sentiment across Fortune 500 companies has definitely changed after Facebook Libra picking up. So they are definitely kind of the pioneer who's kind of setting up the tone, making people realize that perhaps crypto is a thing and something that they should be exploring. So it's definitely positive, and we should actually all cheer for their success.
Do you guys both agree, or?
Well, I do agree on the fact that because these big corporates which are very well known to the general public, are actually taking an initiative. So a lot of attention and interest to normal people will be brought to this space. In regards to CBDCs, I think both has pros and cons. But if that central authority has or never had or has lost its trust from within its boundaries, I think it could give room for DeFi and people who are seeking for another trust form to actually be interested in DeFi. So I think there are both pros and cons in regards to that.
I agree with the Libra point that bring a lot of awareness. This is something that we need in the crypto space, because when we talk about crypto, it's just limited to a certain amount of people that already know. And this certainly bring in a lot of new users and new curiosity about this space. And but for this global coin to grow, I think it will have a lot of hurdles from regulatory side, because of the financial industry is very regulated. But it's a start. It's better to have a start, not even have. So we look forward to more and more big organizations that they already have user base, and then to explore this area. Yeah.
Thank you. I think, hey Ken, do I have some time left, or? 2 minutes. We're gonna do Q&A. I think if you guys okay. I think it's really hard to have all these guys sitting up on the stage. If you guys have any questions regarding DeFi projects, great one.
So personally, I'm not that bullish on DeFi. So my question will be, who will be the first wave of adoption users except those in emerging countries? And then what kind of products are they gonna basically adopt? I'm talking about major adoption.
Yeah. I think from our experience, we go to a lot of countries to explore the mass adoptions. And so far we see Venezuela because the central government, I think that the people confidence towards their central government is quite low, and also as well as their currency. So they are exploring the alternative assets. Oh, excluding those countries. Good question.
Tough question.
It's also tough questions. I would say the country who has large amount, the higher percentage of crypto users, such as Turkey, maybe Korea. Korea is a higher value. In terms of, not many people have this, but the value of the cryptocurrency that they have is a lot. So when you look at Korea, China, and also.
Totally. It is really hard to tell the future, like find new IT investment in those products or the products. If anybody want to add some thoughts to that?
That was a very tough question,
It is
but
very tough
now,
question.
if I asked you back, would you have thought like 4 or 5 years ago anyone would be able to actually borrow money via smart contract, via Ethereum or Bitcoin? Because now it's possible. It may be a little inefficient in some way, but go back 4 or 5 years ago, would that have been possible? Would you have imagined it would be possible?
Sorry to cut you off here. We ran out of time. And I think it's really great time to move on to the room and then do networking. I think all these type of questions are very valid. I'm sure a lot of people want to talk about the DeFi, crypto finance, fintech, however you call it. We all in this together. We all, working for some way, one way or another, contributing to decentralization of the assets in finance. Give a good round of applause to the panel, please.
Thank you, Chang.